Beis, Volume 1. We're in the middle of the first chapter of Maimer 30, Discourse 31, V'lo yochel Yosef Sapik. And as we're climbing the ladder in the interface of Sfiris, from number to story to Sapir, brightness and transparency, transparent brightness, transparent clarity. And this chapter is begun in Be'emes Yashlem the Ikar Ayin Sfiris Abiras Ubchinas Ubmadrega Shalamayla Matzilis. That the primary element of Sfiris being transparent, as I explained in the previous class, that the goal is that we have containers, but the containers become so refined that they can be transparent channels without their own color and ego getting in the way for the air. So we established that at the end of the day, all kelim have colors. Air, on the other hand, is naturally a bohir, it's a natural illuminator. Its personality is illumination. A keli does not shine. A keli can be a container to something that shines. It can be a transparent glass, but it's still a piece of glass, or whatever other matter it may be. So the real behirus is in the air, but in the air itself, he's saying now the real brilliance, the real transparency, is in the levels that are higher than Atzilus. So in other words, even air and Atzilus is somewhat shaped by the containers and somewhat identified. So obviously, there's subtle differences between Kalim of Bria and Kalim of Atzilus and Kalim of higher than Atzilus. So it says that this is both Hein Mitzad B'chinas HaKalim, Hein Mitzad B'chinas HaEris. In other words, both the Eris and Kalim and Atzilus, even the Eris even the energies are not the real, pure transparency, only the levels higher than Atzilus. To explain this, he began a discussion of the difference in Kalim itself now. So the Kalim of Atzilus and the Kalim of Keser. And the difference is the difference in engraved letters and written letters. So let's just review and sum that up before we continue on. So written letters, which is the Kalim of Atzilus, the containers of Atzilus, are like a Dover Nesef, an additional element, in this case like ink on parchment. The ink is not made out of the parchment. The ink is imposed on the parchment. It's true that the letters themselves, they reveal letters, but they reveal while they conceal, because the part of the ink that's on the cloth, on the parchment, covers it up. But there's two sides here. We're not talking about someone who just smeared or spilled ink on a piece of cloth. That's altogether. That's like gibberish. We're also not talking about letters that are on top of each other. That each letter has to be distinguishable and surrounded by the parchment gvil. So clearly, we're talking here. There's a what's for a certain balance and symbiosis between the cloth and the ink. It's not just the ink is now taken over. So you have a certain relationship, a certain balance between the two. And essentially, but the bottom line is, even though the letters are revealing, they are also concealing. They're not like made of the object itself. That's the mashal. What's the nimshal? The nimshal is that the kelim of Atzilus are henkimuhus acher ma'er. They're like the ink to the parchment. They're of a different personality than the air. The only difference is the kelim of Bria, Abiyah. There you'd say, just to use an example, imagine somebody went and spilled milk on the parchment, or they put salt on it. So there, first of all, it doesn't even get attached to the parchment. I'm just using an example. And most importantly, it's a davar zar. It's completely ink fits on the parchment. The parchment is receptive to it, and the ink does not compromise the parchment. The parchment, as I said, remains surrounding each letter. A little more subtly, the letters are expressions of ideas, whereas the kelim of Biyah, as he puts it, that's a davar zar. Shem be'inyan acher shlem be'inyan hatzilus, which essentially, I'm thinking in the mashal, in the example, of the letters. There's no real example, because once you have written letters, engraved letters, is there a lower level in written letters that's a dover zar? Yeah, but I just said you spill milk or something like that, or you could say it's letters that are meaningless, not like a Nechi Hashem Alekach or something like that. But it does fit an example when you teach. So, like he says, me'inyan acher, you can give imhu sacher legabe'er. What he says, shalei me'inyan hatzilus. You see, the kelim of biyah is not even in the realm. Like, I'm just trying to think of a very good example for this. It's definitely containers. They're not. Well, it ends up being when you teach somebody and you give them an example from the same world, but it's an example, or you give them an example from a completely dover zar because they can't relate to that world yet. That would be biyah, essentially, in general terms. The reason I don't want to use example is because I said earlier on, when we learned about this same idea, he said the parsa between Keser and Atzilus, a parsa in general is a curtain. A curtain is already a concealer. What does that mean? Like he says, its AC is built in musudaris. It's letters that are not organized. So when you're teaching a text, even if you explain it, but the letters are organized. A riddle, or like he said, the kameas, the amulets, they're the letters, someone looks at them, they don't mean anything. But within them lies a message. Yeah, it's cryptic. It's a cryptic message. So there's a difference between the cryptic curtain between Keser and Atzilus, and the cryptic curtain between Atzilus and Biyah.
And that within them implies the message could be through them, you could get to the message, like the letter before them, the letter after them.
Fine. Either way. No, but my point is, and since the Kelim of Keser are Chkike, so he said there, so that's a riddle that is within the same subject matter, because it's the same idea, because it's engraved in, but it's still disorganized. It would be like someone engraved in stone a riddle. Whereas if you write the riddle on a piece of paper, it's in addition to being disorganized letters, it's also of a different personality. That's what he said. But that's the parsa, that's the example. That's why I'm hesitating using that here, because he's not talking about the parsa. Here he's talking about the kelim themselves, the letters themselves.
Last time we used that as a parsa.
Right. That's why it was not a contradiction, because there also he said that the riddle in Keser is from the same mahus, but it's still disorganized. Whereas from after Atzilus, it's not just disorganized; it's also from a different personality. But anyway, bottom line is the kelim of Bria, which is actually an expression that was used earlier, and he explained it at length. I just remember it's at the bottom of a page. I don't remember where. It's at least 50 pages back. Do you remember this? He even gave an example. Now I realize.
Is that in the same chapter as 11?
No. Far earlier. Far. Shlemi Inyan Atzilis. I'm not going to look for it now. I'll find it. I think he explained it well there. Maybe he's relying on that. Okay. But anyway, so going back to Atzilus, the Kelim are of the same paradigm. However, they're not of the same substance. Priyatzir Nasiya. What did he say about Priyatzir Nasiya? Remember I explained once Priyatzir Nasiya, 3 levels. It's Tzemach Tzedek. Yeah.
I was hearing about it, reading about it, 2nd level was being taught, your own level, 3rd level was understanding it directly from the God.
Yeah. Right. And that's where it would work very well. Like, for example, let's take light. You can see the light in its source, mamish. That's Ayin itself. You see the sun. You can see the sun through a glass. That's kelim of Pnimis HaKelim of Atzilus. You could see the sun through a mirror, a reflection. You could see the sun through colored glass. You could see the sun through colored glass, a reflection, and a reflection of a reflection. That's really how it's coming down. So the more cloaks and veils, the more, not so you could have the direct light, but it's coming through a veil. You could have direct light coming through a veil, but it's only a reflection. Now remember, since we're talking such infinitely distant light, obviously there's infinite levels of concealment possible. So really, that's really what it comes down to. That's why, to really understand this, you have to think in terms of, see, our scope is pretty limited. But that's why with all these examples, you come down to, as I said, when you teach a kindergarten child an aleph, how many veils really is between that aleph and the biggest Talmud Chacham? You could say there's hundreds actually. I'm not talking about qualitative. I'm talking about physically. He only knows a letter, he doesn't know what a word is. He definitely doesn't know what a paragraph is, what a sentence is. And then he doesn't get the paradigm of logic. There's all these veils. And in physical, you could also find very many examples. And any type of dilution of something that's pure goes through many, many stages. So I'm trying to find real examples, and I need to give it some more thought, but I'm just giving you the formula for it. The formula is to find something so basically to put it in the words that he says here, in Biyah, the Kalim, not only are they like a glass, which means they're not the actual light, they're also a Dover Zar, which means that's already going through a distortion. There's a distortion taking place. It would be almost like saying, you know what, I think a way to put it is this. Think of light coming to you through some type of filter that actually fundamentally changes the light, and you think it's something else. That's a Dover Zar. Whereas in Atzilus, the Kalim are taka not one with the air, they're matter. And that's energy. But the matter is not distorting what you're seeing. That's the key thing. I wish I could find an example, but once I'm saying this, you may be able to find an example. Just to give it a little thought. And the more examples, obviously, the better. But you see the distinction what I just said? Both are matter. Kalim are not the air, that's clear. But one creates a sar. That's why he says a chaz v'shalom. What's the chaz v'shalom? Because in Atzilus, to have something that, like so-called, takes it gives the image that it's something else, is a God forbid. That's a distortion. So when Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, in the Neshama of Atzilus, like he said earlier, it was Chachma of Atzilus, gave over something. Yes, he gave it with a filter, but no way was it like it was not a new paradigm. It was not a new entity. So that's the key thing. And yet the Kalim of Atzilus are still not the air itself. So now he explains that. Even the Pnimis HaKelim, which he gives an example for a clear pane of glass, clear glass, which is letting the light completely through. You're seeing, someone can ask you could be challenged and say, what's the difference between the light with the glass light? I'm looking at the sun without the window, and you're looking through a window. It'll be hard-pressed to find an actual physical measurement. Now, of course, subtly, there's no question that somewhere the glass is somewhat diminishing it. Maybe minuscule that the naked eye can't see it. Regardless, it's definitely coming through something. It's coming through the glass. So he's saying, Primis HaKelim, Chichenis HaKelim would be a glass that's a little, let's call translucent. And in Kelim of Biyah, it's not even translucent. You're going to get something else. You're going to get a diffused light that you may not even think is light. It may look like something else. When it comes to the Primis HaKelim, so he says the Primis HaKelim are completely transparent. Is the Behiras HaChemer Levad. At the end of the day, it's matter. It's going through something called matter. However, this Chemer Ayin Mamish, I'm just choosing lines here, is Kol Chomer. So on one hand, a pane of glass is no different than a curtain, or no different than a table. On the other hand, it happens to be a container that is transparent, that is very conducive for something very conductive, as I said. It has conductivity.
It's a very important thing here, because what you're seeing through the glass is actually a reflection of the matter.
It's a combination. It's a combination. It's still it's Eir HaShemesh.
No, but whatever you're seeing is coming through the matter. So it's a reflection of the matter. I think this is the very
I don't know what you mean by reflection. Matter doesn't reflect. That's the thing. Matter is another substance. I would say it's a very refined piece of matter. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, but it is a step away. Okay. I will call it b'achem levad. However, this matter is very similar to the energy or light that's flowing through it, like he said with the eye and so on. But it's still chinas neisaf ala'er. It's still an additional thing. It's not just energy. There is a pane of glass. There is some type of filter happening here. It just happens to be a very transparent filter, a very conductive, highly conductive. So it allows it through. I'm not going to read it all because we learned it. I'm just summing it up. So there is no matter. So then what defines that they're kelim? What makes them kelim? Because at the end of the day, they are letters. So they're like essentially letters within the light. Think of letters of light. Instead of letters made out of ink that express an idea. Here they're letters of light. And here he gets into, does it conceal or does it reveal? So this came down to the discussion. The answer is, it reveals, not like the ink that covers on which also reveals, but it's also a concealer. But they're nevertheless mashchirim. It still darkens. There's a shadow when you engrave letters in a stone, a precious stone. So the question is, we also see there's concealment. So he explains there's really two things. That's what he says. There are two things. What letters, the concealment that letters achieve, there are two levels of concealment. One is not a concealment of the fundamental nature of expression. Or let's go in the order that he says it. The first is that it's letters. When you say the idea, let's say 2 + 2 = 4, you say the idea that hakel is yesir mechelik, that something, a whole, is bigger than a part. The idea, you can have in its full glory. It's just not reflective of the millions of ideas that are there in the level of air. In other words, kelim, by definition, even in keser, are ultimately oisis. They are letters, which means they're expressing something. Aleph is not a Beis. But the question is Aleph not a Beis, meaning that Aleph is only considering that it's not a Beis, but the Aleph itself, is it complete Aleph? Or is the Aleph also diminished? And that's the second thing. That even the Aleph you get is also going through a diminishment. So there's two diminishments going on here. One is that you're limiting the flow of the whole energy. And the second is that you're actually diminishing even the energy that's coming through is also being diminished through the container. So now, in Keser, we only have diminishment number one. That's why there's a shadow. So what's the shadow? Is that in this area where the letter is, you don't have the same brightness as the stone is without the letters. What's the stone without the letters? The stone without the letters, think of it, all the ideas in your hard drive, in your brain. Just give you an example. This idea now is the idea that's coming through these letters. So in these letters, there's a certain shadow because it doesn't have the brightness of the brain. If someone was just to say, okay, show me your brain, show me your mind, the mind would just flow and there'd be a bright stone without any shadows at all. Here, we're talking letters. We're saying on a concept. But the concept is not of a separate matter. The concept is the one in your brain, in your mind. It's not letters on paper. It's not even letters of speech. Think of it letters of thought. That maybe is a good example. Letters of thought, are they illuminators or concealers? So he's saying, it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about compared to all the ideas in your brain, it's only one, it's a flow of a particular expression. So it's letters. And there's a certain shadow there. If you're talking about the idea itself in your mind, it's as clear as it gets. It's as bright as it gets because it's not outside of your mind yet. When someone speaks, you're saying, speaking, a new additional diminishment. Besides it not being the expression of all the ideas, you now have a tangible words. It's more limiting than the way you understand it in your own mind. And you put it on paper, Maisa is even more so. So in other words, there's now a new level of diminishing that's coming into, even in the idea itself is getting diluted, so to speak, getting not as bright. So when you write on paper, like when you write on cloth, that's the second, both diminishments. When it's in the keser, it's only the first one. That's what he's saying. I'll read it inside. Beis in Yabin has Hester. She says, what is it, mashchir? What is it darken when you engrave letters? As havokas ha'evan tev. You're only limiting the brightness. In other words, in some way the stone isn't as bright in that area. What's Lamaila? She says, because the Hester of Kelim has two things. The core essence, I gave the example of Seichel, but the truth is the core essence of it is not Mislabish. What you're getting is only a certain element of it, an outer element. So what is it, this in this case? It's not that it's concealing the Eir, it's because you're giving some form of expression, so it's like it has this incidental effect. You're not trying to conceal anything, you're just trying to express something. Expression, by definition, has to limit the etzem ha'er. Because everywhere where it comes into kelim, by definition, you're not getting the core. That's the whole point of what a keli is. Even in the most subtle form of it, that's what a container is. Second is not just that you're getting an expression. The air is actually that manifests as being concealed and covered by the containers. The container is actually limiting it. That's the example I gave. I gave one example. You can give it. The first element is also in grave letters. Being that it's containers, the core of the whole air, the whole energy is not manifest there. But that which is manifest, you're getting from the same material. It's out of the same stone. It's out of the same matter, or out of the same energy, rather. It's not a glass. There's no pain here. There's no matter. It's energy in letters, so to speak. Energy in communication. It's something similar, if you remember, we spoke about how Shir Atzme Bekeach, Eir HaBligvul, the infinite light the artist has chosen to allocate one type of image from his whole world of possible images. So in his mind, there's now a beginning of a definition, but it's still completely made of the same material as his mind is, and his ideas. It's the same material of all the images. Because at that point, the images are just are potential states, probable states. It's something like, you could say it's a quantum type of state, which is fundamentally not defined by parameters. But then, once you choose, and let's say you measure the particle, right? Then you've chosen it's now become a defined state. In a way, there's no return then, so to speak. Even though with God there's always return.
Measuring the particle, that would be in Atzilus, and defined would be.
Yeah. I would say in Kes it's more quantum-like. It's like many possibilities. But I'm talking more the idea of the measuring with the Heisenberg's that you can't until you measure that you cannot know the velocity and position of an atom.
That limits measure.
No, and when and then once you look at it and view it, observe it or measure it, then it gets. Or similar, the Rebbe uses the example. It's one of the first Farbrengen I ever wrote, the full Farbrengen Shabbos. The Rebbe wrote, the Rebbe edited tremendously. It was Miketz Tovshin Mem. So the Rebbe spoke about these things, potential states and actual states. So potential.
Actual time.
No, not time. It's just potential states and actual states, and because potential and actual, like we've talked many times here, there's a helam, which is just potential. Okay, something's behind the door. You open the door and you see it. So it's not qualitatively different. It's just that you don't know it yet. But then there's a fundamental in quantum mechanics. You fundamentally, even if you had the instruments, it's a state of probability. So the Rebbe then spoke about klal, prat, and klal. It was a very unbelievable farang, deep. So he gave an example from Parsha Miketz when Yaakov, what did he say? Yaakov shomer es hadover. Right. After Joseph told his two dreams, which is the end of the story now, he told the two dreams to his brothers, so they were all very jealous, and it was very clear that when 11 stars bowing to one, and the same with the bushels. So it says a verse, a very cryptic verse, that after hearing that, it says, V'oviv shomer es hadavar. And his father, Rashi says, was silent. He didn't say anything, because he understood the implications. But the Gemara in Bracha says, that, I think Rashi, I don't know if Rashi brings it, that Hakal helech achar pisrin is an expression. That when someone has a dream, it's how you interpret it can actually actualize it or not actualize it. If you don't interpret it, it remains in a state of possibilities. Which is interesting. In other words, what do you mean? Isn't this a dream that means this? No. A dream is a type of probability, so to speak. And the Rebbe gave an example for Sfira saying Kes. It's unbelievable. He wrote that you have a state of possible, many possibilities, and one who wants to, you interpret it, you make it real. Which is sometimes why many people say, don't interpret the dream, let's just leave it as is, so be it. Because every dream has Devarim B'Teilim, has Narishkeit, has meaningless, and every dream also has prescience. So it says, the Gemara says, Ayin cholam b'lo Devarim B'Teilim, there's no such thing as a dream that doesn't have nuisance. And then a cholam also has a vision. But the real challenge is, how do you know which is which? Most people probably give more credence to the shtusim, and they forget the message.
It seems like as long as you define it as a good thing, it's good.
It's not a game. It's not a game, no. That's why it says, Shomer es hadavar, that Yaakov didn't want to interpret it. See, Shomer meaning he protected it. He kept it secret. It's another story. Another story. But that's what Yaakov, that Gemara says this. That's why Yaakov was... So the Rebbe brings and says, Re'ez Samach Vov, that Me'en Zeh is also Lamaila. Then the beginning was all the possibilities, spheres saying Ketz. And then came when Shir Batz Mebikeach that he wanted 10 spheres. The Rebbe wrote this. I remember, I was like blown away. In other words, Nimna Nimnois, when you say God has all possibilities, is a reality right now. And then in that world of all possibilities, he chose one possibility. So there's a state where that one possibility is like the state of all possibilities. However, at the same time, once he chose that possibility, it becomes a reality. So Bereshis bara Elokim, and the world as we know it is not amorphous and maybe different. So that itself is a paradox. So if you go through the levels of, let's say, you go through the source code. There's a place where the source code says Asara Mamoris Yirakia. Absolutely, and your key is not Eir, and that's that. And then you go deeper, you go into Bereshis bara Elokim, where you have all the Mamoros, everything is there. But that's still, at least in the category of a Bereshis, so that the artist just has the vision of the whole existence. That's like Ak, you can say. And then you go to Lifnei Tzimtzum and Shir Asma B'Kayach, there you're already talking how in these infinite possibilities, there's one possibility, and there the possibility is one of a whole amorphous soup of many. The interesting thing is, because we have only one God and not many, so even in Metzias of existence all the way down here, we have the power of Tshuva and you have the power to rewire. Because deep embedded, even in the defined code, there's also the undefined code. That's the biggest chiddush of all. But that's not what we're discussing right now. So there's that element. But generally speaking, why do you say kosher kriyas yamsuf? That's as difficult to make a shidduch as God creates. Why is it kosher? It's difficult for God. God created water and land, created the rules that water and land don't mix, created the whole logic of it. Why is it difficult for him? So Chassidus says very clearly, it's difficult once he defined the code this way, he will himself bound by it and will not just try. If he changes it, it's a miracle. That's why he says in Tanya, what, he needed a wind? You have to have a wind to hold the water up. What's going on here? You're doing a miracle. You don't need no wind. You created the wind. You created the water. You could just make the whole water disappear. But God does not disrupt the code. He only disrupts as much as necessary. Whatever you don't need to disrupt, you don't disrupt. I mean, for many reasons. First of all, he wants this world the way it is. And more importantly, he wants us to work it. He doesn't want to, that's why in Shem Chalnes, and that's why he doesn't do a miracle for no reason. In other words, the real paradox is to understand how the structure is absolute. At the same time, there's an element in it that comes from a place that's very quantum-like and beyond. I mean, it's not a contradiction. Look, the same thing when the Rebbe speaks about what the Frierdiker Rebbe said. Every second we're waiting for Mashiach. So why are we buying houses? Why are we establishing ourselves as if we're permanently staying somewhere? You come to a place, rent, because any day Mashiach may come and we're leaving anyway. So the Rebbe brings in Friedrich Rebbe that when the Jews traveled in the Midbar, the 42 journeys, so Al Pi Hashem Yisu, Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, God said, here's where you rest, here's where you move. So, Command Kfilu Dami, the Gemara says. That means it's as if you are permanently there. But in a day or 5 days or even a year, you're leaving. But right now, since it's a godly command, it's permanent. It's actually the opposite of what we learned about Gashmis. Gashmis, if it's going to die at the end, you say it's dying now even. Here's the opposite. Since God is eternal, it says, even, I'm telling you to stay temporary has a permanence to it, because it's a divine command.
They put mezuzahs on the...
There was no mitzvah mezuzah there then. Let's put mezuzahs everywhere. But it's fine. I mean, the Rebbe brings it also to Ragachova with halacha that, for example, in Beis Hamikdash, when they did malacha, so there was a work. For example, there was the work of Zrika Saddam, which is spraying the blood by the altar. But you can't get to the Mizbeach without walking to it. So there's all kinds of halachas that define the walking, even though the walking is just incidental. But because it's in Kedusha, even a preparation also becomes holiness. Right, that type of idea. It's still, there's distinctions. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can have, I'm giving examples where you could have a defined reality while you also have an undefined one. And it's not a contradiction. And each one you have to play the role, whatever it is. God tells the Eir, I want you to be Gvul. The Eir says, I'm Gvul now. It doesn't say, hey, 1 second, I'm coming from a Bli Gvul place and I'm not going there. Because it's completely bottled. So it's also bottled there. And God said, I want it defined this way. It's defined this way. You see, because remember, God is beyond definition and beyond definition. So definition is not a contradiction to beyond definition. That's why I say it's beyond. Quantum is a contradiction. So you're either in the probable state or here. But there's a third place that says both are real. Who says non-definition is closer to the divine than definition? That's when the Shabbos. So that's really where it's, I think, the level that physics has not gone to, which is a level that's beyond even the beyond, so to speak.
It's like you say, who said Ruchnis is closer than...
Exactly. So Gvul and Bli Gvul. It's true that if God manifests in existence, in expression, Bli Gvul is a more natural flow, because everything is there. And it needs an additional element, like we said earlier. That's why Kalim are something additional. It's an additional effort, so to speak, to make it Gvul. Because naturally you would assume, wherever God is, you have everything. If in fact there's a limit, it means something is saying, stop. Okay, but it's still a divine command that's saying stop. So it's also divine. What I just expressed, by the way, is the difference really the fundamental difference between Kalim and Eir in the root. It's just simply God saying stop or go. Go is more natural in the logical conclusion because it's like a chacham. A wise person has what to say. That's natural. He'll say. For him to stop saying something, to be quiet, requires an additional effort. But I want to go back to this idea here. So, how did I even get to this? Because we're talking about Keser, the Kalim of Keser. So, in a way, I was just using it as an example, because it's still Keser, so I cannot say that the Aces and Keser are part of Bli Gvul. But in some way, they're part of the Eir. It's the Eir expressing itself in this way. So therefore, it's not letters that are imposed like on the cloth. It's in the stone. But at the same time, it is mechasa on something. The Eir HaGvul, even Shir Atzmei B'Keach, where he envisions, where the artist envisions one piece of art, so that piece of art is illuminating as it gets. The first element.
Why are you going to Shir Atzmei B'Keach? That's before the Tzimtzum. We're talking about Keser.
I'm giving examples. First of all, whatever he's speaking here is there the same. It's yeah. And secondly, I just wanted to connect the two because it's an example of how it can be an entity, but it's still of the same. There's no matter yet. It's just the air expressing itself in letters. So what does it conceal? It shadows. It's a shadow because it doesn't tell you all the other possibilities. It's now 10 spheres and not infinite spheres. That's clearly an element of concealment. So that's the first element. But in what it is, the 10 spheres, it has the whole intensity of Eir Ein Sof. In this case, in Keser, it has the whole intensity of Eir. It's a keli, it's like the words you have in Machshava, as opposed to Dibur, speaking. So it has that whole full intensity, which is why, by the way, you need to have a tzimtzum. if he's envisioned 10 spheres, so what do you need to conceal? He's already limited the flow, because as he didn't limit it, because he limited only in terms of 10, but its intensity and quality is exactly like the infinite, because it's the same brain, it's the same mind envisioning it. So it's still in that state. It needs another additional concealment to completely block it all, and then the kav can begin to define the actual spheres. So the Dakus, the Shimu is this, because he used it before. He keeps using, goes back. The Shimu is the Kalim. That's the Dover Nesif. The Shimu is the root of the Kalim. So he called that. He said that already was. Yeah. Okay, so the Kalim, basically, so we're up to is that the Kalim are of the same matter as the energy. So this would be like the Oisius of the Rishimu. That's what I wanted to say. This is the Oisius of the Rishimu, or how the Kalim, or the root of the Kalim of the 10 hidden spheres. We're not talking about the energy. We're talking about even the containers, even the expression. No, but this is Kalim still. That's the distinction. It's not the
Where does that come from? I thought everything came from Rishima at that point.
Well, he's not distinguishing. I'm just thinking about one thing. 1 second. Yeah, I have to qualify one thing I said here. The example I just gave was more fitting to the Eir HaGvul, not the Kalim, not the root of the Kalim, because the Kalim, see, the root of the Eir HaGvul, even in the artist's envisioning, there's 2 parts. He envisions one image out of many, but that one image has specific personality. The Kalim are the specific personality. The Eir is more the one image, as opposed to many images. He's not really saying that here. He's talking about the Kalim. But bottom line is, it's the details, but they are made out of the same stone. Which means, it's essentially in your mind, you're already thinking of the details, but it's not yet like ink on parchment. It's like engraved on stone. And therefore, on one hand it conceals. What is it concealing? Only that which it doesn't have. It conceals the rest of the stone, so to speak, the big picture. The brightness of the whole stone. But it does not conceal what it is. What it is you're getting as undiluted as it gets. You're getting the light itself. So that's what makes it Kalim. It's very abstract and very pure Kalim in the form. That's the Kalim of. Then he says, "V'zeu ha'hefresh." V'zeu she'esis mashchirim rak al avokas even tev. I'm just reading on. I'll just start here. That this is what it means that the letters, the engraved letters, they darken, they shadow. Only the brilliance of the bright stone, of the precious stone, which means only the core energy. But the letters themselves, which means is not the Eir Atzmi, not the core energy of it all. That Eir Mislabish, nothing covers or conceals it. And this is the difference between written letters and engraved letters. The written letters, like containers of Atzilus, they can cover and conceal the energy that manifests within them. Like we said, both elements of diminishment. And the containers, they do not conceal the energy that manifests in them. And the energy radiates as is. So why do they darken and shadow? Because they're concealing the whole picture, so to speak. The Eir Atzmi. The Eir Atzmi is not inside them, right? And in truth, yesh hefresh gam etzad b'chinas ha'atzmos. In truth, there's a difference also from the level of the Atzmus, of the core. What does he mean by Atzmus?
Before he said Atzmus Eir.
I guess it means that. Yeah, let's see. The bekalim she'ena b'chinas muhus achar, that containers that are not a separate personality. Ein islapshus ag b'chinas chitzein se'er. Kim gam b'chinas atzmos. In containers of Atzilus, we said is a muhus achar, right? It's like the ink on the parchment. But but containers that are not a muhus achar, like in other words, engraved letters, they don't just receive the outer dimension of energy; they also receive the core energy because they are.
Not all of it.
Hold on. Gam b'chinas atzmos. Also.
From the B'chinas Atzmos, not the whole B'chinas Atzmos of the.
But he's saying, "Ein islapshus rak b'chinas chitzein." He said, the manifestation is not just external, but also from the core. In other words, it's more than just the external. V'alkein be'emes ein adema eifnei eram islabish b'kelim shebekesel eifnei eram islabish b'kelim datzilus. And therefore, in truth, you cannot compare the way the energy manifests in the containers of Keser, that's higher than Atzilus, to the way they manifest in the containers of Atzilus.
Behemoths and Neftonis are the same thing in
Hold on, I want to see what he's adding here now. 1 second.
In other words, even though on the bottom he said that the first level was that the Atzmi is not being established in the Kem Kimrak Kitzunis Levad, now he's saying it also a little bit, like Ramesh was saying, a little Kimgama Kinis Atzmis, no?
Yeah.
Not just.
In other words, what he's saying is the two differences that he described, how kalim, containers, diminish. So what did he say? That in engraved letters you only have diminishment number 1. And that is that you're not getting the atzmi. But you don't have diminishment number 2. Because what you're getting is full brilliance, the full brightness. In diminishment number, in written letters, kalim of Atzilus, both. You're not getting the atzmi, that's for sure. You're also not getting even the energy that's going into these letters themselves. Because they are diminished and they're of a different substance, they're the ink. What he's saying now is, but based on this, it appears that the diminishment number 1, both kalim are equal of Atzilus and Keser. What he's trying to say is that even in level 1, they're also different. That's what he's saying now. So here you'd say, you know what? They both have one commonality, that they're both kalim and they're both not reflecting the whole picture. And the difference is only how much the flow is going in the letters themselves. Where here you're getting the pure brightness, and here it's a diminished brightness. Clear? He's now saying, no, even on the first diminishment, there's really a difference also. That's really what he's saying. That's really, even the atzmi. So when we said exactly what you just said, that atzmi is not of the air, is not mislabish, that's not, in truth, that's not precise. You break it down, even in the first diminishment, meaning even the first step, the kalim themselves are not similar to the kalim. Not only that they're in the second element, but also the way they. In other words, bottom line, how ink conceals the parchment, and how the shadow of engraved letters is not the same type of concealment. That's the key. There's this fundamental difference between them.
It's the difference of the zashus of the or and the kli.
What?
It's the difference of the zashus of the outside.
I don't know what you mean by that. I'm not sure what you mean.
In other words, the kalim are different type of receivers.
Yeah, well, that's what he's saying, because now he's saying that even the first step, the containers themselves are getting also from the core energy, whereas by written letters they don't even get from the core energy at all.
The top of the page says, right?
So now he's qualifying that.
A little bit of the auspices also.
He's qualifying that, right? In other words, he's saying even in element 1 there's a distinction.
So the ore has to
He's going deeper. He's making the interface even more eloquent by showing that you could say, you know what? Okay, there's an element where the container is very bright, but it's only in its own area. He's now trying to show that the containers of Keser are actually also containers for Bli Gvul that is beyond Keser. That's what he's really saying. For the Etzem Ha'er that is outside of the Kelim even of Keser. Because right now we've established till the Suba Emes, you can say, okay, fine. The containers of Atzilus diminish, but they're of the same they're the same paradigm, but they're matter. It's matter as opposed to energy. In Atzilus, even the Kalim are not matter. They're of the same stone, they're of the same personality. However, they're not the whole personality. Now he's saying not only they're not the whole personality, that they also have something from the whole personality as well. That's what he's saying now. Did you understand what I just said? He's going even a step further now. That even the Kalim of Keser also have in them something from that which is beyond the Kalim, which the Kalim of Atzilus do not have. The bottom line, the more refined the container, the more it allows the flow of a bigger reality to manifest. And now he's going higher up. That now he's even manifesting even the containers of Keser, because they're so refined and they're so subtle and they're all part of the energy, are now also receiving not external energy, only what's inside of them. They also have in them something deeper. Let me just use an example, okay?
It's like from the story you come to the...
Yeah. We talk about the artist making one image. A beginner or novice looks at the image, he sees a beautiful painting. He starts analyzing it and starting to realize there's more to it. He comes to realize that even though this is paint, a foreign element, there's a story behind it, right? Once you start relating to the story, you're starting to relate to the artist himself. The artist has in some way manifest himself in his painting. He's told his own story. As we said, the next step is that the story becomes transparent. You're really getting a sense of standing closely to the person, as if the artist was standing right near you, even though he lived 1,000 years ago, and telling you his story. Because what are you doing? You're moving upward, where you're getting rid of the so-called, you're stripping it of the technical containers, and you're getting the energy. What's really the message here? The message is far more than the containers, obviously. Far more than the expression of the message. It's not just the blue and green and what you see. You start getting into the story, like to the point where you don't even see the letters. So in Atzilus, you're still dealing with a world where you have an expression that is like ink. Or what it means spiritually is that it's telling you the same story, but it's telling it to you through matter, through a pane of glass, through something that is not of the energy itself. You come to it in Keser, the letters no longer have real substance at all. They're basically, all they are is an expression of the energy itself. But they are an expression. So something they do shadow, something they do darken. So you could say at that point, okay, they tell me a very pure story. I'm like standing with the artist as if he's right here, and I'm hearing his story, and it's in a very personal way, and identify. But I don't know a lot of other things about the artist that he didn't tell me. You could say, that's the etzem. That's beyond you. That's what's mashchir. That part is being shadowed. That part is concealed. Or you can go a step further and say, no. Because you've gotten so close, and you're in such a subtle place, you're actually understanding things about the artist that he didn't even put into this painting in the first place. In other words, you understand the etzem that is not even being expressed in these kelim. Because the kelim are part of the same stone, so in a sense, the same letters that right here are shadow, but they're right attached to the same stone that doesn't have a shadow. So that sameness, that similarity is also flowing into somewhat even when the shadowed letters.
That's the fourth level that we were talking about a few days ago.
No, the fourth level is Eirus themselves. He's not even getting to it. This is all Kalim still. This is the Kalim. The letters are Kalim here. The stone. Avram, this is all Yaakov's stone.
At this point I thought there's no Kalim already.
No, there's Kalim because there's expression. As soon as there's expression, engraved letters are letters. Engraved letters say, Anochi Hashem Elokecha is not Shema Yisrael. So you got to just remember that. There is a story here. There is an expression here, that's for sure. So we're talking about, I think this is a good example. So now he's saying, you're also getting the core personality, or the core of the Eir itself. That Kalim of Keser do this. Kalim of Atzilus Not.
But it's not. Only yanked to the core. There's no separate.
Yeah, but it's still letters. We're still talking about letters here. We're talking about Kalim of Keser. It's Kalim of Keser, not Eir of Keser. Kalim means Eisius. I just told you. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha is a statement. There's 10 commandments, not 11. These are statements. The question is, what is the statement telling you? Is it just telling you a statement? Let's put it this way. You do a mitzvah. A mitzvah has parameters. You're eating a piece of matzah. You do it with a certain shear. There's measurements. You're supposed to do it at a certain time, certain measurements, certain space. Everything is parameters. So you could be hearing and focusing only on the parameters, and you sense the parameters. You know, some people, that's what they do. They have little scales, and they have this, and they come with the rulers and with tape measures. You know, you have anyone like doing that by matzahs? When they start measuring the matzah, someone like pulls out a tape measure. Huh? Okay, so there you go. So they're basically focusing as much as one can focus on the measurements. And then someone else who learns a little chassidus understands you got to do it that way because that's what God wants. But you understand, it's not the little box you're creating. This little thing is reflecting the bli gvul of Atzmos. So a very big difference. It's like kavanas ha-mitzvah and the action of the mitzvah. Now we need both. But what are you focusing on? Someone will be focusing, like I sometimes give an editor to read something I've written. And they come back always, they say, well, you have 5 typos. I said, first read it and tell me if you got the idea. Instead, they're focusing on the typing mistakes, which is fine. You have to fix the mistakes. But there's 2 separate things. There's a message here. Some people don't even read the message. They're just busy with the technicalities. You need both. That's what I'm trying to say. Is we're talking here expression here. We're not talking just the world of air. We're talking here world of expression. The question is how much of the expression is concealed. How much of it is concealing? How much is revealing? You know?
What is the shadow? What's the difference of the shadow?
Because at the end of the day, it is a container that's expressing Anoichi and not V'layilacha and not Zachar Shem HaShabbos.
It's all in it anyways.
No, it's not all the way in it. It's in it concealed. That's why it's dark.
In it concealed.
Yeah.
So there's a concealment.
That's, of course, you keep saying that. There's 2 concealments. There's one concealment, there's a second concealment. It's not bli gvul. At the end of the day, it is what it is. The question, look, it's an interface. You're not going to master this. There's not going to be a total bli gvul is not going to dominate in total gvul. We're trying to find a place where they meet. He's giving us a formula how to make them meet. What you're trying to do is figure out, is it this or that? It's not going to be that way. It's going to be both. And that's why without a Veda you can't get there, because it's not just a mathematical, it will not add up. Because gvul and bli gvul, is it gvul or bli gvul? What's going to be the answer? The answer is going to be both. The question is how much of you is there? How conscious of you, and how much do you relate? I mean, when people say aha, the aha moment, when they get an idea, define the aha moment. Very hard to define it. It couldn't happen without you understanding the idea. You can't say aha before you heard it. Anyone that says aha before they heard the talk, you know there's a problem. You know? They shouldn't even be there, frankly. You got it already. Why are you here? You know?
We now have parallel between those levels of Kalim. Now we have like Tzilas, it's etzem or it's obvious, and something is concealed. And we're saying the same thing about Keser now. It has an etzem or, but nevertheless something's concealed.
Okay, so is that shocking? And trust me, whatever you just said, there's another 1,000 levels like this.
Okay, but I thought we were saying that they were only equal at the first level. Now we're saying they equal also in the second level.
I know the word equal is a very strong word. He's saying they're not equal, actually. He's saying now there's a dissimilarity, even the way they relate to the etzem ha'er. That's the bottom line. So in truth, you cannot compare. It's not similar how the energy, even the core energy, manifests in the containers of a keser to the way they manifest in the containers of Atzilus. So you see, so now that's the step higher. Now he's going the other way around. Okay, so we've established that the kelim of keser are really distinguished from the kelim of Atzilus in both elements. In the relationship with the etzem ha'er too, even though there is some darkening there, but it's not as darkening like of ink. That's an additional element over the parchment. And of course, the second thing doesn't exist in Kelim of Keser. Kelim of Keser are revealers completely. Kelim of Atzilus, then they do some concealment, even in the letters themselves. In other words, if you were able to, let me put it to you this way. I'll give you another example. And think about these examples. These are very important. If you read the same statement, let's say, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, or Zochre Shem HaShabbos, or Kabedis Avicha V'Simecha, or Leisignei, you read it in a book. You're reading it on the tablets. You're holding the luchas and seeing them there. You're hearing it directly from Moshe Rabbeinu, from the Rebbe. Or you're hearing it from someone who heard it from someone who heard from 50 people before, and additionally, you don't even trust that person. Is there a difference? The same statement? Same words. Major difference. The more levels that you hear from, it doesn't have the same impact on you. It does emotionally and intellectually. You may also not appreciate it. They say, Eisius machkimes. If someone tells you something and then you read it, reading brings out a deep. What is the reading doing that the person who told you is a good storyteller or he's a good teacher? There's something about the letters. Maybe you can go over it again. You read it again, you start seeing there's a deeper meaning. In other words, everything begins, in the superficial world, everything is one-dimensional. What you see is what you get, and weiter gegangen. But in the world of truth, there's nothing that's one-dimensional. Everything is multi. I just gave you an example. We could really go infinite examples. So we all went to yeshiva, right? And or some of us, and we learned the same things. What we really learn? We learned basically Aleph Beis. Is mostly what I got from most of my years. So I know Aleph Beis. Maybe a little also, a little Mishnah and Gemara, some methodology. But compared to the levels of what you really could know, and when you start really learning, it's a tip of minayah. It's a tip of the iceberg. Yes, it's a tip that's necessary. You can't begin learning deeper if you don't have the letters. So, but just to show you, the same word, the same Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, can mean 1,000 things to 1,000 people. So really what you're doing is climbing, that's why I said the interface. So Kelim of Atzilus essentially is you're hearing the words, but they're written on paper, which would mean it's one step away from the source. In Kelim of Keser, you're hearing the words, you're reading the words, but it's in chike, which means it'd be very different if someone was able to see the actual luchas that the Eibishter gave. I'm just giving an example. I mean, the example is engraved, but it's a step closer. The letters are closer to the source, essentially. Now, they're still the same words, but there's a big difference between how a chacham reads the same sentence and a person who's not a wise person reads the same sentence. Same sentence. One sees only kelim, the other one sees air. The question is, how much air do they see? And I'm going back to the example with the artist. So what he's saying here is that you're seeing the etzem ha'er. That is kelim of Atzilus. Remember, he still didn't even get back to that the ikar behiris is higher than Atzilus, sai b'tzad the kelim, sai b'tzad the air. We'll soon get to that. We'll finish it. But right now we've established that the kelim of Atzilus, that means the kelim of Keser, higher than Atzilus, are far more illuminating and boher than the kelim of Atzilus. And by the way, kelim of Atzilus is a pretty high level. We're not even close to that. We're not even kelim of Asiya, Gashmi, and Chumri, and all the other layers and veils that we have. So we're basically in the kindergarten.
Sure, many Mambarim it says that the kelim of Atzilus is Esis Hakika, like the kelim of Rabbi, right?
Yeah, let's use that example, but
he's just using it as a
it's relative. It's relative,
Why does Rabbi Shab start so?
But in the big picture, when you look at everything, the chikika, obviously, the higher you go, is more chikika. This is a painstaking process. You have to come to understand. There's going to be a point where, as I said before, where there's no even Eisius, but there's only air, but the air is seeing the Eisius, because there's so many levels here. There's how the Eisius completely are transparent to the air. There's how the air looks at the Aces. There's how the higher air looks at the air that looks at the Aces. You understand what's going on? There's so many levels here. What?
Why shouldn't you be telling us more about Caleb closer to home and then get to hear a little bit later?
Well, if you came to the classes back in the early chapters, you would have heard about those Caleb. He did speak about them. Look, the Rebbe Rashab is going back and forth on the whole map. where we are right now, he's already discussed Kalim on much far lower levels. The Kalim that we are in our world is what we call klippos. They're not even Kalim anymore. They've become husks, and they're like hard layers, shells. And we also have levushim. So he's spoken about it. The reason you ask a question, why we're here when we haven't finished that, is giving the whole picture. I would say that even this chapter, even in the Kalim, we can find examples of it in our lives too. Even if we're dominated by far lower levels, but these levels are happening in our lives right now too. So it's not just learning about something that's completely impossible to access. In its full intensity, obviously, that's someone who's on this level is able to reach this. But the key challenge is, how do you translate this into where you are right now? That would be the bottom line. I mean, I'm using some examples. The way I would say most obvious is that in whatever it is that we do, you have to be looking for the deeper meaning behind it. Let's take a simple example. We'll talk Hashgacha Pratis. God leads the footsteps of a person, which means that today, this Thursday, right, Zayin Tevis, you're going to be going different places. Some of us know where we're going, some of us don't know where we're going, some of us think we know where we're going. I remember a very prominent Lubavitcher leader, quote unquote, once I was talking to him, and he said to me, it was Rabbi Shem Tov, he said to me, I said to him, I had to go somewhere. So he says, let's continue. He says, I'll take you there. I say, you can take me to my where I want to go? He says, I don't know if I can take you where I want to go, but I sure can take you for a ride. So the point, what?
There's a lot of depth to that.
Yeah. So the point is that we don't really know that God leads our footsteps. What you'll do with those footsteps and what you do when you get there, that's up to you. So when you're going to go today for a business meeting, or you're going to meet somebody in the street, or random, what we may think is random, it was meant to be. The classic story of the Baal Shem Tov, where he sent his Talmidim on a mission. They came back from the mission, his students, and Baal Shem Tov was more excited, not that they fulfilled the mission, he wanted to know where they traveled. The famous story with Rabbi Chaim Rappaport, right? And he told him, he went this way, that way, but he wanted to know the details. Finally, he told the Baal Shem Tov that we rested a certain side of the road one night. When we woke up in the morning, we took some water. We made the brachas and so on. We took some water from the brook, and we made a bracha, a blessing on it. And the Baal Shem Tov jumped up and said, the water was waiting from the beginning of Sheish Yemei B'rei, from the beginning of time, for you to come to make a blessing. So what the Baal Shem Tov see that Reb Chaim didn't see, what we don't see, he didn't see the letters. He saw the story behind the letters. So all of us, in anything you're doing, you can be looking at what the experience is, or you could be looking what's the opportunity. Businessmen do this every time. Real business people who own businesses, wherever they go, 24/7, they're busy making connections for their business. They're completely single-minded, focused. The Rebbe, a havdul, not a havdul, it's exactly like that. Everything was an opportunity. Opportunity to elevate another spark, an opportunity, good things, negative things, everything was an opportunity. This is someone who looks at the inner choreography, the inner engineering, and not at the externals. Most of us are far less, let's put it this way, more superficial. So we focus what happened that moment, then we move on. Once in a while we have a technical experience. The message of this is, I didn't go through Keser, Kelim of Atzilus, Kelim of Keser. What I said is even probably Kelim of Asiyah Ruchnis is also pretty much seeing the Hashgacha Pratis. So you have to find, however, in your own life, examples of this. Because I could see, sometimes, for example, you can focus on the story behind the story, but then you could focus even more. It all comes down to the level of how deep you go into what's really going on here. Because even the story of the Baal Shem Tov, there's also many levels. What does it mean that Beis Yemei B'rei was waiting for this? What does it mean? Because in other words, something happened right now that changed the world. So most of us don't see how the world is changed by our actions. But we realize that. So my point is that all these levels, when you start spelling it out personally, you can find, okay, here's the example of Kelim of Atzilus in my life, here's the example of Kelim of Bria, here's the example of Kelim of Keser. If we had more time, I would go into examples of all those levels. Well, actually, we do have time, but I'm choosing not to do that because I'd rather really finish the Perek and then more information, it'd be easier to give more examples. I'm just giving you the general methodology. What I just said is a methodology. If you apply yourself to it, you'll come up with plenty of examples of how you can see the so-called connect the dots and see the picture beneath the story. It's actually a good example, connect the dots. You know those games we play, children play, or the inner child plays, which is, you start connecting dots and suddenly an image emerges. Everyone has a certain pleasure when you start seeing the image. Why? Because you suddenly realize that this so-called jumble of random dots has meaning, has a message. Or when you go somewhere in the woods and you find a stone, and you start rubbing off the dirt and the moss and so on, you find letters there. Like that message. Or you find a bottle at a beach and it has a note in it. And there's something about discovering a deeper a treasure, a meaning behind a concealment that makes sense. It's like when you suddenly realize, these things, and suddenly it pops in your head, wow, it all comes together. That is essentially what's going on here. We live in a very fragmented world. Yaakov took from all the fragments of all the stones, which are the stones, the letters, the stones that we're talking about, and turned it into some cohesive message. That's the story, Matseva, and all the way to Beis Elikim, everything we've been learning. This is really in different terms. Now, the levels need to be spelled out. My big mission and goal would be to actually spell this out in a comprehensive blueprint that people can use as a method to grow in your life. Here you are, here's a gauge. You're on a sea level, here's where you begin. You climb, the thermometer goes up. You got into a tzia, and everybody can measure where they are. You can call it a Kabbalah game or something. It can even be done like a game. It's like what we do with children. Here's a goal, and here's where we're up to the goal. One of the most exciting parts when we woke up in the morning was to see our Mishnayos Baal Peh stars on the charts. And of course, you got extra points for coming to a Cocoa Club or something. See, I remember. This is goes back, it's engraved in my memories from 45 years ago. I remember Rabbi Eli Lipsker, that was my great uncle. He was the chief rabbi of camp. So we were masmidim for Shtetzach one year, just to add insult to injury about the kindergarten things. We were masmidim noch. I think called us masmidim. Farthest thing.
One big playgroup, they call it masmidim.
So what masmidim after Ma'ariv, everyone else went to a midnight swim or whatever, or play basketball, and we had the schus to sit there and listen to a shir. After a long day in camp. I don't know if you've ever been through this oppression, but it shaped us into who we are today. So I remember Lipsker telling us, Rabbi Lipsker, he's saying to us, you think that all the boys that are going to play basketball and going swimming are the ones that, what's he say, are the blessed ones? No, you're the blessed ones. And it didn't change much. I'm just saying that's what he told us. So I don't know why I'm mentioning that. I guess I'm just have to vent some of my childhood trauma. But anyway, it's fine. The more the merrier. I love it. We're uploading. YouTube servers are being uploaded with all kinds of interesting stuff. I hope one day just all the wires fizzle in Google's headquarters, and they come and say, "What's this Ayin Beis thing?" Every day they get another hour and a half on their server, so that's good. And also on Rabbi Yisrael's cell phone. Your circuits are not yet burned out. Okay, good. So get the gang. What's the limit here? Okay. The Kalim are there. The Kalim. So really the goal would be to map this out. As I told Rabbi Dr. Lang many times, I'd be happy if anybody wants to sit with me at any time. I'd be happy to start creating a map. We could put it online. We get a designer. You could really create, I think, a major blueprint here. Because this is psychological. It's emotional. It's obviously spiritual. It's about how to look at reality and how you see it. How does Kesser look at it? How does Atzilus look at it? How does Bri, Yitzira, etc., etc.? And how do you look? Where do you fit in? You could almost make a quiz and say, we give you a scene, tell us what you see. And based on that, you could say, you are deep in Asiyah Chumris. Or you could say, hey, that you just gave us a Yitzira look, or a Bria look, or a Atzilus look. Someone sees a Kesser look, great. Einstein, genius in his own right, when he looked at physics and he looked at phenomenon, he saw something that others didn't see. So he saw, and it's just as an example, he didn't see the kalim, he saw the eris. Just give, And generally, an experienced person who's an experienced in any given area will look at the same thing that you and I are looking at, and they'll see a pattern. And you won't see a pattern. What are they seeing? They're seeing eir instead of just kalim, basically. To put it in, the question is, how high can you go? How far can you go? Now, this would be a great exercise, because it would be just even good to see where do I stand? How far am I from it? Because that's how you grow, by realizing, 1 second, I'm down here, I want to be there. I want to be able to look at something like an expert looks at it. When I see it, I want to see what's really going on, not what it appears is going on. Okay? So what do they say? What do all these singers and poets say? Most people live lives of blindness. They basically do not know what's going on. They know what's going on in their immediate, it's called myopic vision. They see the immediate. Intelligence lets you see a little more. The question is how more. But this is not just what comes natural. Chassidus teaches us you could expand your containers. You can work on this. You can change things. You can train yourself to see more than you see, to experience more than you experience. I think that's a pretty enticing
Headline.
Yeah. And the more you train yourself, the more the kalim become more refined, the more the air flows through. How's that? Okay, so Acha Hefresh, so now he's going back to Atzilus. He's going to say now, in Atzilus, we also have these two levels. What we just said, the difference between Keser, the Kalim of Keser, and the Kalim of Atzilus, he's going to say in Atzilus itself. Acha Hefresh Hazeh, Yesh became the Atzilus Gufa. In the containers of Atzilus itself, we also have this difference. Ben Chitzenis HaKalim, the Primis HaKalim, between the outer containers and the inner containers. Or the inner dimension of the containers, I should say. The Bebchinis Primis HaKalim, Shuzeo Masha Keli Hi Bedugme, Ela Er. He adds on the bottom. That in the level of Primis HaKalim, the inner dimension of the containers, which is what? Shuzeo Masha Keli Hi Bedugme. That the keli, the container is bedugma, like you said earlier, it's similar. Gamken heslapshus he yeser b'pchinas atzmus ha'er. So now, even in the kelim of Atzilus, and don't think this is just technical. Let's move back now. What's the kelim of Atzilus? Kelim of Atzilus are real matter. That's like glass. Well, no, glass is actually transparent. But now you're talking about ink on parchment. We're not talking now the higher level, where the containers are basically just letters of light, so to speak, or the letters from the same substance. It's just that it is letters. Here we're talking now the letters are different. So here too, Primis HaKalim, because they are so transparent, you have in them more from the core energy than you have in the outer containers. But in general, it's really the distinction between Kalim of Keser and the Kalim of Atzilus. Even though in Atzilus itself, you have a similar two levels. But this is a general principle you're going to find everywhere, like you asked about Chikka and so on. That in general, it's like this, and specifically, it can be even the same level, which is obvious, because that's how it is, that's how it works. So let's say when you look through a glass, which is Kalim of Atzilus, the previous Kalim of Atzilus, it's transparent, you see much more of the core sunlight than, let's say, if you look through a shade. A curtain. In other words, what he's saying here, that the distinction is not only that the letters themselves are diminishing, but you're also getting, the more transparent the Keli, the more you get from the core. Not just on the second level of the distinction. It's not just that you're getting a purer idea. You're also getting more from higher levels. That's a key point. It's a very good point. Understand the thing? So in other words, when you have a teacher and you're learning something from the teacher, and let's say you get the idea clearer than someone else does, you're not just getting the idea, another thing is happening. You're becoming receptive to bigger ideas that you're not yet getting yet, so to speak. You're already being able to relate to those as well. So two things are happening when you grow. You don't just get more clear, you also... This explains a lot of stuff. That explains a lot of things. Because if you remember in the previous chapter, Kuf Yud, what was it, Kuf Chaf, 120, he said that there was two things in air boiher. Remember, he said one thing is that the air itself illuminates, and then he says that the air illuminates what's higher. So it's a very similar idea here. That you're also getting what is also gives you more of that. That's beautiful.
It's not like Kamus and Echus, because Kedusha Kamus is also.
Yeah, it's everything here is more echus in general. Kamus is, I mean, you could apply it to Kamus. That when you have more Kamus, you have more echus also. But I would be careful what you mean by Kamus.
You're drawing down more, but it doesn't really mean that.
No, yeah. So you can believe a man sat, how many hours a day must he have been writing this? I was writing this day after day, and here we're sitting and trying to understand what is in his mind. I think it's pretty cool. What do you think? Okay.
Is this whole thing you're explaining to us, is this brought down from other Rebbeim, or is this...
I'll tell you the truth. As we learn it, I go and I research. I've not really got to this chapter. I have to see, because it sounds to me that there's a lot of chedushim here over what's previous. But the general gist of it, look at my page here. I've written all over the place because I'm looking in the Maimarim. You have to really learn the Maimarim Torah Vayetze, and these Maimarim come alive like you've never seen. You have the Rebbe Rashab, you could study those Maimarim from the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, and adds a whole dimension that when you learn this, you understand those Maimarim completely different depth. So it's all based really on the story of Yaakov the Evan. But he's bringing from many places. This is not said there. There basically the point is that the Evan is lifted up to reveal Keser. That's the gist of what the Alter Rebbe says. So, but not much explanation, just bare words. But all these ideas, I mean, I can tell you what I've been writing here. I mean, I've shared most of what I share it. There's even a place where the Tzemach Tzedek, you could see the Tzemach Tzedek when he's ruling the Torah air, he's wondering whether, I wrote it here, he's wondering whether the stones, the Avonim, according to Alter Rebbe, are they the Kalim or are they the Eris? A Gvul. He actually asked that. And he says it's mashma, it's this, and then he says we can learn both ways. So you see, so a lot of what's being said here is an analysis of those lines. Instead, but there you don't have any of the Havana. There's no explanation, the difference. It's just all cryptic there. There it just says, is it a Kalim or is it Eris? Now you start reading this, you realize. So this chapter I have to look, because the Rebbe Rashab is what he's doing is like the Rambam, literally. He's bringing all of Chassidus together. So the basis of essentially the last few Maimarim is Torah, I would say some Eira Torah. I write on my side, I write, I also put it online. On each chapter, whatever sources I find, I put up there. That's where you really begin to appreciate this. I mean, a lot of things, even my understanding of it is when I look there, I realize what he really means. There's a lot of things like this whole Havayahu L'Elikim. Remember that? It's very brief here. You look in Torah, it's a whole thing. That once the Mashiach comes, the Asad Lovin, Yitzchak, that's when you have that, and that's where Elikim becomes Havaya. So this is when you learn this, you realize that the Rebbe Rashab is assuming you've already learned Torah, and is not repeating most of it. That's just a whole other dimension of learning this. Here's a perfect example of Aces. You can learn this and understand this well, and then you learn that, and you realize that what you got is Kalim of Yitzirah, maybe. And then that's another example. It's endless. Look, Chassidus has not been learned. I see Chassidus today as literally the equivalent of Nigla, the end of Zman Chasimus Hashas. Really? We have 7 generations of Chabad Chassidus. We have no Rashi, we have no Tosfos, we have no, and this is a chilik of the Torah. This is a taste of what we're going to learn when Mashiach comes. So think, 7 generations from Mishnah to Gemara is basically the Amoraim. Tanaim and Amoraim were around 7 generations. Maybe a little less, I don't even know exactly. I think 5-6 generations. Huh?
Around there.
Yeah. And they didn't even have yet the Rabbanon Sivrai and the Gaonim and the codifiers and the Shem and Achrenim. So I actually think that what we have is the core doctrine. that the Rabbeim gave us. So we're doing. I'm trying to do is as much as I can do, and I think we all have to do it. It's a whole system in Torah. It's a doctrine of Torah that is really just in its early stages of development. Lost love is when we're really going to be learning Chassidus the way you're supposed to learn. But the Rebbe Rashab said that I want the yeshiva to be that was a learn Chassidus as they've learned Sugyas and Gemara. That's what he said. He wants to learn Chassidus like you learn Sugyas and Gemara. Now most people don't even know what that means because as they say, yeah. Look, there's pshat, but if you really want to do it well, you have to do it the way exactly like the Rambam did it. The Rambam learned Gemara. He knew what Rashi says. He knew what Tosfos. He knew what everybody said, and then he came and so-called summed it up and gave his position. You start learning. You see Rambam disagrees with Rashi and the interpretation of the Mishnah, the Gemara, and so on. The same thing is here. You have to learn all this. Now we have all the text. That's the good news. So when you're learning Ayin Beis, once 20 years ago, you didn't see what the Rebbe Rashab saw. When he sat with this, he had manuscripts on his table. There's no question about it. You could see. He quotes. I'll show you. I do whenever I find that he's actually quoting literally word for word, I mark it. Here, just in the last chapter, you want to ask me something right here. This is from Matzazu Tafresh Mem. Yeah. Which is itself from Maimarim before. So there's entire pieces, literally word for word from previous Maimarim. So he didn't write it from memory, for sure not. I'm not saying he couldn't, but you could see that he quoted it and then explains it. The most fascinating is when you see what he quotes and what he adds. Then it really comes alive. You want to learn it on that level? I'm more than happy to do so. We did it a little with the Shari Tshuva, remember? We took the Shari Tshuva. You literally saw how he took it and explained it in a completely different dimension. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, so we said, okay, Hefer Shanal will be closed by a Kelm that says Lekelm Dixabekas. So even though in Atzilus itself the previous Kelim is more of the Etzamer than the outer dimension, but generally we're talking the difference between Keser and Atzilus. The Kelim Atzilus Machasim Ala'ed HaMislabish B'Teichem, that the containers of Atzilus cover up on the energy that manifests in them. Mashenken HaKelim Shabekeser Eina Machasim Klal Ala'ed HaMislabish B'Seichem. Whereas the Kelim, the containers of Keser, they're not cover at all the energy that manifests in them, and therefore they also reveal more of the Etzem Ha'er. So when you want an idea in its purest form, the Kelim of Keser will give it to you as pure as it gets. In Atzilus, you're going to get it one step away from the idea. I'll give you the Rebbe. If someone asks the Rebbe, what's the difference when it says in Samar Vov, it says Seichel and Er HaSeichel. I'm just going to give you an example. I think I mentioned it here once. And the Rebbe gives a beautiful answer. He says, Seichel is an idea. The Er HaSeichel is the reasoning behind the idea. And the Rebbe gives an example. Moide b'miktzas chayiv shvua. When someone, let's say, says, you owe me $1,000, and Shimon says, no, I owe you 500. So there's a different rule than if he denies it all. Since he's admitting part, so you give him a shikl benefit of the doubt, because Ein Adam Meis, or whatever, I'll soon get to the reason, and you make him swear. So if he swears, it's cheskes kashrus, so you rely that 500, because the question is, that's the seichel. What's the Er HaSeichel? So the Rebbe says the Er HaSeichel is Ein Adam Meis panav b'fnei Bal Chevei. What's the law? If you look at the law, you use the scales that you mentioned by the Seder. So the law is the law. But you need to know the reason of the law, because also the reason of the law will help you know where to apply it, or not to apply it. What's the reason? Because Ein Adam Meis panav b'fnei Bal Chevei, a person, the nature of a human being, the way we were created, Adam, they say, not Adam. Adam will not have the chutzpah before someone that he owes. In other words, he's admitting 500. So he's admitting I'm your Bal Chayv, I owe you. To say that I owe you and then lie in the person that he took from is not the nature of a human being. The question why we see people can do that anyway, that's because that's the question of whether they're Adam or not. But that's
Why do you need a shvuah if that's true?
Yeah, that's crazy.
No, because the shvuah is because you want to make sure, because it's easy for him to get him off the hook, because he is biased. He is biased. Shvuah is to confirm. Basically, okay, you really say that, so swear, and then we'll know for sure. It's
Icing on the cake.
No, because he's biased. If he wasn't biased, he may not need it, because you can just rely that he has a chazakah. Why should he lie? But here he has a bias. Plus, if he's not ready to swear, then he's not together Adam, I guess. Or whatever. Then the Rebbe says that's Eira Seichel. And then he goes further, he says, and even deeper, maybe the Eir of Eira Seichel is the Edelkeit from the Nefesh. Because Hagufa Kasha, why would a person not lie? So it teaches you the psychology of a human being. Because human beings have a certain Edelkeit, there's a certain refinement. A person doesn't, a healthy person is not going to spit in the face of someone that did something for him. So you see here the same idea, that is a pure halacha that someone can look at as a raw legal ruling, has a deeper understanding and even a deeper one. I'm just using an example where you can take the same idea and travel inward. And you can go very deep in any halacha in this sense. Once you know the edelkeit of the nefesh, the Rabbi uses that word, edelkeit from the nefesh, you can also apply that to other halachas. Because you'll find in other laws also similar, that the Torah assumes that a healthy person has a certain measure of respect, a measure of this. Leib Shuftan Askinan. So you have a certain element, just to use an example. Anyway. So what you get, you're actually getting the core truth of the idea. And look or delve into what it says in the Hemshech Rosh Hashanah Samach Vav. This is the famous Samach Vav. This is causing you aggravation? Why are you sighing? Oh. Valkain Shamhu Ikir Inyan Abihirus. Now he's going back. And that's why there, meaning where? Kesed, higher than Atzilus, is the primary place of brightness. Transparent illumination. Transparent Shebekalim Shemegalim Etzmeir Kameshahu. Shamu Ikir Inyan Abihirus Shebekalim. There is the primary brilliance in the containers Shemegalim that reveal the core energy the way it is. So based on this whole discussion, where is real Behirus? He began a discussion chapters ago that Behirus began with Kalim of Atzilus. Then he explained that is the inner dimension of the containers, Pnimius. Then he explained that is the Eir. Then he explained that is the Eir that reveals higher than the Eir of Atzilus. And now he's saying the primary place where real illumination takes place, where real clarity takes place, if you thought you were very clear about things, is in Kalim of Keser of Atzilus. This is from the perspective of the Kalim. Valkeim Shama Ikrin Abihirus Shemekalim B'chinas HaKalim Shebekaser Yesh Shleimer Shezeh B'chinas Eser Sfiras HaKlulim B'Keser Dainu Sheresh HaPnimi. That's why I brought the Rishim. You'll also see here now. However, now we're going further. This level of containers in Keser, we can say Yesh Shleimer is always the Rebbe Rashab is adding something. Shezeh B'chinas Eser Sfiras. These are in the level of the 10 spheres that are encompassed in Keser. Hainu Sheresh HaPnimi. We're not talking about Eir HaBligvul. That's what he's adding now. We're not talking about Eir HaBligvul. I was explaining it before, if you remember, that you're getting a taste of what? Of all the infinite possibilities. So I'm not going to strike that from the record because that's what we're getting there too. But right now he's saying, Yesh Leimer, that we're not talking yet about that. We're talking about the core energy of the root of the Eir HaGvul. I know this is going to definitely throw us all for a loop. It's throwing me for a loop. Because now what does this mean? He's adding another dimension. In other words, you have the idea, Moide B'miktzas, okay, like I just said. You come to understand the core, the energy, in the letters of that are engraved in Kesser, you understand the idea itself, not the way it's passed on through Dover Nesef, like a glass or something, through matter in Atzilus. And you're also getting a taste of the core energy of the idea within, in other words, the idea itself. I'm saying also the core energy. But what is this etzem? So he's saying this etzem is the sheresh hapnimi. In other words, you've reached to the top point of how far you can go with pnimi sa'ir. The b'chinas ein sof mamish, because in the infinite light itself, hayno er shu b'chinas ein sof b'chinas bligvul. The air that is ein sof b'chinas bligvul. Remember, we've been discussing the whole Hemshech till here, all the chapters, right? You can testify. Is Keser and the Spheres. So initially, Keser and the Spheres, Keser was Eira Bligvul, Kedotzen, and the Spheres Is Eir Pnimi. Now he's saying, no. There's an element in Keser which is still the root of Eir Pnimi. And then there's a level that's Eir Ein Sof HaBli Gvul. So to go back to the whole discussion, if you recall, after he finished the whole discussion of the 10 spheres, how they're like 10 faculties and they're rooted in the 10 hidden spheres, then he went and said, and then there's Eir HaBli Gvul, that's Keser, Rotzen, that doesn't manifest in a container. Now he's coming to a point where he's explaining that Keser is going to have both dimensions. So what we're discussing now is even on the lower dimensions. So what is the root of the Eir HaGvul? So we know the Kalim go to the Shima, which is the power of God to create the defined. The Eiris also have spheres in them. They go to the Eir of the Esa spheres Agnuzis. So the 10 hidden spheres are also the root of energies, of 10 energies. Except there it's all amorphous, then it takes shape in the Kav, until it manifests in Atzilus where they become one. But the root, what he's saying now, is because Eir HaEin Sof and Eir HaBli Gvul, like he's saying, Ein Shaykh Inya Kalim Klal. There's no containers. So everything we're discussing here is in the world of containers. Containers of Keser, right away saying it's not Bli Gvul. V'abehirus disham hurak b'chinas ha'er. And the behirus in Eir Ein Sof and Bli Gvul, that is only the level of air. This is now, he's going back to the beginning of the chapter. Remember he said, Ikar in spheres of Eir, Madrega Shalom, Ma'al Matzilus, Hey mitzad b'chinas ha'kelim, Hey mitzad b'chinas ha'eris. So now we've established that in Keser there are Kelim, and also there, the primary reflection, primary brilliance and transparency on all levels is the Kelim of Keser. As they are transparent channels to the air, but that's all Gvul. Eir HaGvul. Now he's going over to Eir HaBli Gvul, where there's no containers altogether. So now we're talking, so when what does this mean? Let's explain. If you say the idea 2 + 2 = 4, or Moed b'miktzas, or that day is light and night is dark, or whatever, any idea you come up with, you can go all the way to the root, to the core, and where is in its purest form this idea is clear, is in the Kelim of Keser. But that's Kelim. It's a Neiche Yesham Lekach, it's letters. It's just the purest form of them. When you're talking Bli Gvul, you're not talking about a specific idea. Bli Gvul by definition doesn't mean an idea. It just means divine desire. God wants, period. It doesn't say what he wants. It's just a infinite flow. I would say it's not even the infinite spheres of the quantum state, because that's already spheres. It's just infinite spheres. So real Bli Gvul is even beyond infinite spheres. He's not spelling that out here. If you remember earlier, he did speak about these levels. He said there's a state where, remember he said where it's Eir, it doesn't even have spheres altogether. Then there's a level where there's spheres and case. Here he's definitely talking spheres, because we're talking spheres and behirus. So we're not talking, I correct myself, we are talking about infinite spheres. That's what he's saying here. But however, it's not one idea. It's Bli Gvul. Eir HaBli Gvul means it's just a flow of infinite possibilities of art. Then the level that's beyond that, we're not discussing now. The higher level than that. Okay? Just for the record. So this level now,
Still defined as art.
yeah, like art or spheres. I wouldn't say one subject. No, it's infinite subjects, but it's in the world of subjects. Yeah, now you have to say that. It would be like infinite numbers, but it's numbers.
Right. Infinite nickels, black diamonds.
I would say infinite numbers, period. I would not make any limit to it. It's infinite nickels, dimes, and everything. But everything in the category of the world of numbers. That's what I would say. I mean, this itself can be discussed different ways, but let's, for now, practically purpose, say that the Kelim is definitely a defined form, but the purest defined, go all the way to the root of the defined form, you reach the ceiling is going to be Kelim of Keser. Now we're moving into Eir HaBli Gvul. And this is where he's saying now like this. So he said, the Ikar Inyan Asfiris and Behirus is B'madrega Shel Ma'al Matzilus Mitzad B'chin Kelim, Mitzad B'chin Eseres. In the beginning of the chapter. After explaining how it's Mitzad Kelim, now he's going and saying, the B'chin Eseres Mamash, Enek Shaykh Ina Kelim Klal. V'abehirus Zesham Urak B'chin Eseres. So when we say clarity, that something is bright, brilliant, and clear, now we're talking only air. Remember we spoke that air is also a garment. God dresses himself in a shirt. It's called air. So this air is not the kalim that we're talking about. That's how air is a reflection of the essence. Till now we're talking about how containers reflect the energy within them. Now we're talking about how energy itself is a transparent reflective of of the source of the energy. We're getting one step closer to the source. So now it's Behiris itself. The Behiris is the air itself. We're not talking about the stone itself now, not the letters in the stone, to put it more in the emotional. Huh? How would you pronounce it? Not Shakim, not the heavens? It's the level, the heavens are called Shakim. I thought it was Shakim. That he is a Eir Boyer Hu B'Schakim, that in the heights. Shakim also means the heights, but it's a name of one of the heavens. It's another name for heaven. Shakim could also mean, Shakim is toys. Mischakim. Okay. B'Schakim. So it says Eir Boyer Hu B'Schakim. Where's that pasuk? Okay. Anyway, that is a bright light, a bright energy, B'Schakim. Shezeh Behirus de B'chinas Atik. Shakim refers to Atik. Atik is Keser, the highest level of Keser. So this Eir Boyer is now in the level of the Eir itself, like it says elsewhere. Ta Behirus de Sham Hu B'chinas Gilia Etzem Mamish. This Behirus now is actually revealing the source itself. So Kalim of Keser are revealing an idea, but it's in its purest form. And they also, as I said, are more conducive to the core than let's say the written letters of Atzilus. Now we're talking no filters. All the filters are gone. You're going now right into the light itself, into the energy itself. So Gilia Etzem Mamish. This is Eir HaBlikvul.
This is the same thing you mentioned last week. I keep asking that fourth level that we were talking about. You're outside.
I don't know if you can limit the fourth level. The fourth level that he said before was that in addition to the three of the containers, he just didn't spell it out. He just says the core energy.
Maybe now he's spelling.
No, it could be there. You could say there's the core energy within that is within the containers or higher than the containers. He says yeah, you could say that. No problem to fit the fourth. You could say this is the fourth. Yeah. Tzatzilis Shabbatzilis. I'm just saying Havai Deleila. Yeah, it's you can say it absolutely. You could, yes. You could say that's the fourth. That is the fourth. Etzem Eir Mamish. Okay, so what does he say here? Now you don't have this Natsilis. Why? Because Natsilis, the energies of Atzilus, their transmission, their flow, their transmission is through a tzimtzum, a concealment, and a parsa and a veil, a curtain, between Keser and Chochmah. And even though this curtain is not a separating curtain, it's not a mafsekes, not a divider, a separator. Commission is Baralel Pedikuv Zayin, like we learned in chapter 107, which goes back to the beginning of the subject of the whole Yaakov and Lavan. The pasuk, we're talking about the pasuk. Below Atzilus, it is a concealer. That's what Lavan wants to intensify. But higher than Atzilus, it's a very subtle, it's a very thin veil. Well, I wouldn't say window, because it's a parsa, it's a lavush. Kalimar can be a window. A parsa is never a window. A parsa is already a shift. It's a diffuser. But so we said, so we can learn this. Like we learned there, that the air is not a mahus achar. So in other words, even though Atzilus is not a separate entity of the divine, it's divine. Nevertheless, it's also not the actual personality of the energy of the source itself, of the emanator himself. It is Atzilus. It's Netzalim. They're emanations, they're not the emanator. In other words, they're like that interface. So they're not complete creatures. They're not creatures, not created entities. They are similar to the source, but they come with a form of concealment. ובפרט לגבי העיר שבבחינת אין סוף. And definitely, compared to the energy that's in the state of Ein Sof, the infinite, Hagam de'er d'Atzilus ub'chinas Gilui Helm, gam gabi ha'er d'Sev v'Kalam. Even though we learned that the energy of Atzilus is Gilui Helm, not a Chiddush, it's not a new entity, it's revealing the Eir Ein Sof, even compared to the Eir HaSev v'Kalaman, which is what he's talking here, Eir HaBligvul. But still, it's not the Eir HaBligvul. It's just a revealing of it. That Tzimtzum b'chinas Siluk, the Tzimtzum was in a form of siluk. Siluk means complete removal, complete concealment. Not just a diminishing. It's not like you have a flow and you diminish it. The Tzimtzum Arishan is clearly talking about completely conceals everything. So even though Atzilus is not a separate entity, nevertheless, it's an energy that came through Tzimtzum. Therefore, it's not a level where it's actual revelation of the core itself, literally. Therefore, its clarity, its brilliance, its brightness is not mamish. Again, going back to mamish. It's not mamish, literally, virtually, the brightness as it is in its source. So think of it like we said, like a pane of glass. It's coming through the glass, and it's the actual light, but there is a glass there. There is something there. Both the level of clarity and illumination and brightness of the energy itself is not in a virtually, literally the most bright light. Being that it's a diminished light, energy. And the same thing, it does not mamish reveal the infinite light, being that it came through a hefsek. So that's what the hain is? Well, there's another hain. I think that's it. Hain b'b'chinas b'ir ba'atzmei, u'kamoy kain, that's the second part. Right? In other words, the air itself is not that bright, and also it does not reveal it of the way it is without. I'm saying the real answer because it came through a tzimtzum and hefsek. So again, we're talking two things here the whole time: the thing itself and what it reveals. If the thing itself is limited, it's going to reveal higher level. It's going to conceal. It's not going to reveal the higher levels. The more transparent, the more bright it is within itself, means the less ego or personality it has, the more it reveals. Mm-hmm. So therefore, what the point is the whole point that he's making here is trying to lead to that real behirus, real clarity, real illumination is only in the air Ein Sof. In the air itself, in the air before Atzilus rather. And even though we learned earlier in chapter 119, in the thing of Hayavai Lekim, what did we learn? What did we learn? That Lekim of today, that Havaya of today will be like a Lekim of today. Which means, in Atzilus, the Lekim are the Kalim. Havaya is the air. When Asad Love, Havaya, the Kalim, the air of Atzilus will become like the Kalim to reveal what? Havaya de Leila. Havaya de Leila is the air habligvul. And now you're telling us that Atzilus is not really the true revelation of Havaya de Leila. I mean, it's like a question. The Be'emes Ken Yir Begil L'Asid, because in truth that's exactly what will be revealed in the future. Shelo Yishum Kisuv Hester Klal. There will be no longer a cover and a concealment. It says that your teacher will no longer be concealed, kanaf, like a shirt, a garment. So what's going on here? And we're saying no, Atzilus is still not the thing itself. We just said before this. It says Yeshlema, the meaning of this is that the revelation of the higher Havaya, the Bligvul Havaya, will be in such a way she is Gala Kameshahu, that will be revealed as it is. Vashem Havayid Latata Vada Yir B'chinas Keli L'Kabla Se'er D'Shem Havayid Leila. Kameshu Be'etzem. So no, he didn't answer it yet. He's still explaining that level. One second. So what does it mean? It means that we'll have both Havayas. It doesn't say L'Asad Love will come and it'll just be a radiate, a bleak vul, and everything else is going to melt away, or be what's the word? It will be nullified. You will say Havaya Havaya Lelakim. It says that the Havaya of today will be a lakim then, which means it will be a container, but it will be a container that doesn't conceal. Today a lakim conceals on the energy. Then the energy will become the container. It'll become, basically the container will then be Havayid Latata. And what will it reveal? He says, that's what he says, Hashem, that Gildi that will be revealed the way it is. And the lower Havaya will be a Keli, will no longer be a concealer like it is today. It will be a revealer, a container that will receive the infinite energy of Havaya the way it is in its core. It'll be a container to do so, but not that it is Havaya Delayla. There will be two levels. It will not that you actually have that the lower Havaya will be revealing the energy as it is. Like he says, Akeli lekabel se'er kameshu. Kim shashem Havaya Delayla yizgala kameshu be'etzem. The words are a little, but basically he's saying is, because he's saying both things. Kim Hashem Havaya Yizgala. The higher Havaya will be revealed the way it is in its core, but it doesn't mean that the Havaya Tata will be the revealing. It'll be a container that accepts it. So you will have basically two levels.
Yeah. It's when you have bodies though.
Because in the future there won't be any concealments. And a taste of it we have now on Shabbos. Shekolu hatzimtzumim. You say vayechal lekim. What means vayechal? You say finished. God finished. Shekolu means it ended, or shekolu something koloyan means that it expired, or yeah. So it's kolu hatzimtzumim. That means vayechal lekim. That it will stop. The concealments will stop.
That's it. Vayechal lekim.
Right. Vayechal lekim is the koloyan of the tzimtzumim. Yeah. Kolu hatzimtzumim. Or kameshel kosem okamach, like it says also. For Shabbos u'me'ein delasid, and Shabbos is a me'ein, a similar taste of the future. In the future, when there won't be these concealments, there'll be the revelation of the core energy the way it is fundamentally in its core. But the air that comes in Atzilus, especially today, since it comes after the Tzimtzum, actually not even today. In other words, the Eir, the Havaya Delatata now he's talking about. The energy that comes after through the Tzimtzum will not reveal the core energy exactly as it is in its own. That's the Eir in Atzilus. By contrast, the energy, the fine energy that's higher than Atzilus, because it doesn't come through any concealment, it reveals literally the core itself. That's why it's fundamentally a illuminating energy. The gamagala etzem air k'moishu mamish.
Talking about the level of Kesa?
Yeah. Air lifnei atzil. Air. And it also reveals the core energy the way it is literally. So therefore, the primary place of clarity or illumination of this level is the energy higher than Atzilus. Mm-hmm. Remember, we discussed at length, if you recall, I gave the example of the department heads. Eir Habligvul, if you remember, a big part of many chapters back, makes distinguish between what's Eir Habligvul, Eir Hagvul. He says Eir Hagvul, the spheres are all meant, or the spheres that is in this Eir Hagvul, are meant to have a purpose. The purpose is to radiate in the world. Or else why would you need Chachma, Chesed, Gvura, and so on? Er HaBligvul is only one role, to express the source, whatever the source wants. So it would be like the chief of staff of the king. It doesn't matter. The king says, bring me breakfast, I want build a building, go to war, plant seeds. Then he goes and they go, well, he tells each department, you go do this, go do this. Their role is to make sure they do it faithfully. They can't just say, it doesn't make a difference. No, the one who cooks is different than the one who cleans, and so on. But the air, all it is just transmitting the will of the divine, the will of the source. So all it is Gilead, like Ratzon. So Ratzon that informs your body, doesn't make it, if the Ratzon says to you, move your toe, or Ratzon says, go learn, from the Ratzon point of view, they're all equal. And that's why they affect the whole thing doesn't need any training. When you want to train somebody, you have to learn how to do something because you're working with the faculties. So Ratzon is that type of commanding force that imposes itself, and all it is Gilead, whatever the Etzem wants right now. That is you getting Behirus. That's the clearest, most transparent way to understand the source, is by asking the HaBligvul. If you speak to HaGvul and give an interview to HaGvul, it'll tell you, my role is Chesed, my role is Gvura. Even the Kelim of Atzilus that we spoke about, as subtle as it gets, and it's revealing exactly what the divine wants, but it's Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And then it stops. Then there's another message. It focuses on the message, on the identity of the message, as opposed to
the messenger.
Or I would say even, and it also has a taste of the messenger more than the written letters and the core. But the bottom line is it's letters. The purest place where there's no letters, where there's no message even, where it's just the messenger's energy, is Er HaBligvul. That's just energy flowing. That energy will later inform and become and evolve and determine that it has to, and be told you have to go into the world of spheres, Gvul. So now we see already how spheres exist in Bli Gvul. Because Bli Gvul, the element of illumination, element of a number or a story, no. What do you mean? It doesn't tell a number or a story. It's not letters. There's no kelim there. But in the area of Eir as Sapir, the primary is in Eir HaBli Gvul. The says is Kum Dafar. So he began with number primarily, is in Malchus, is in kelim.
He says doesn't say Bligvul.
Like that he says clearly before that it's Bli Gvul. He says it several places. Look, Eir HaSeviv.
The whole time we're talking about after the Tzimtzum, no?
Well, look, he says B'Finat Tzimtzum, right? Shelo Yeh Tzimtzum. She'en Abay De Tzimtzum Klal. He says that. I would say that Natzilus the Klolos is probably talking here about Keser before the Tzimtzum. And Beprotius, it's also in the microcosm a similar idea. It's before the Parsa, basically. See, Keser is before the Parsa. He's talking Eir HaBligvul for sure. He's saying it clear. He said it clearly. He's not talking about, he said clearly that's not Eir HaGvul. Yeah. You know, I skipped a few lines. Oh boy, I can't believe it. Nobody pointed it out. I skipped a few lines. He said, "B'frat legabe Esher b'chinas Einsof, agam da Eretz Yelz b'chinas Gili Halam, gam da Eretz Einsof, that Tzimtzum b'chinas Siluk, lei b'chinas Miut levad."
He said that.
Then go on. Commission is Bar Leil Perikov Zayin. I skipped that. I did. As we learned before chapter 27, the beginning at Tzimtzum Yesh Beis Dvarim. Then the Tzimtzum, the concealment, there's two things. Then b'chinas Miut and b'chinas Siluk. No, I didn't read this.
Just maybe these words in there, but Legabe Shash Yaris, that you said for sure.
Yeah, but I didn't read the lines afterwards. Let me just go through it. And as we learned before in chapter 27, in Tzimtzum there's two things. There's Miut, diminishing, and Siluk, complete removal. The Legabe Shash Yaris b'chinas Miut levad. That the energy in Atzilus, compared to the root of the Eris, it's only diminished. Legabe Eir b'chinas Einsof, see there, the energy that's Einsof, Bli Gvul b'chinas Siluk.
That you said for sure.
No, I did not.
This line you said for sure. Maybe Vim Kane, that line is skipped. Vim Kane is skipped. Vim Kane is skipped. This line is skipped. Vim Kane.
I skipped all this.
No, this line for sure you said.
I explained it in the line, Gamma Eretz Yilz b'chinas Gili Helm. I explained it, but I didn't read it. V'im kain ima yesh ein b'chinas mahus acher. This I did read.
That didn't read.
This I didn't. This I did read. You're telling me I know what I read. I did not. V'im kain ima yesh. V'im kain ima yesh ein b'chinas mahus acher. So we come out in the erba that tzimtzum. And therefore, even though it's not a separate mahus, it's still air that comes through tzimtzum. The bottom line, what he's saying here is, and I just wanted to emphasize this because this is critical, that the air of Atzilus is after concealment, so therefore it cannot give you the energy as it is in its pure core. Even though in the parentheses you said the air of Atzilus is still a Gilead Helam, because it has an element of that, but bottom line is it's primarily concealing it, because it's in a form of siluk, it's complete removal. So if you talk about Sheresh HaEretz, that Sheresh HaEretz HaBli Gvul, Agvul, there it's Gilead Helam. But compared to Eretz HaBli Gvul, Eretz Ein Sof, it's siluk. That's why it's not Gilim in Etzim. Yeah, that's clear. So the Erev Atzilus is, at the end of the day, though it has, like you said before, that when you get to the core of the idea, you do get a sense of something that's beyond, but at the end of the day, Atzilus is still not revealing the core essence. It's revealing what the essence wants, which is a structure. He wants L'Hoyer Element, he wants the world, he wants existence. Atzilus is more focused on the structure. A divine structure, all aligned, but the structure. And Eretz HaBli Gvul is the place where you really get the core brilliance of the source itself. Okay, so we finished chapter 121. Pages 230. Yeah, the kitzur, right. Let's do the kitzur. The kitzur is Yeshleim the Ikrin Behirus Ubchinas HaKeser. We could say the primary Behirus is in the level of Keser. Hein B'Bchinas HaKelim. The primary illuminator clarity and transparency is in the Keser. Hein B'Bchinas HaKelim. Both from the perspective of the containers. Kidur the Kelim that Tzil Sein Adarach Moshe Saksav. Because it's known that the containers of Atzilus are, for example, letters, written letters. Shemalim Mala'er Liyesem B'Chus Acher. That conceal on that energy, being that they're of different personality, like ink on parchment. Even the inner dimension of the containers are concealing. The kelim shebekesser and the containers in kesel derech moshla esisach kike are, for example, as an example, the engraved letters. The ime yeshem ashchirim, even though they shadow, they create some type of shadow, some type of diminishment. That means that in the containers you don't have manifest the core energy. But what you do have is total revelation. It's not concealing on the energy that's mislabish. They don't have, it's what it doesn't have. It doesn't have the core. But what is mislabish, it does not conceal. We can say this is the 10 spheres as they are in Keser. So that's already still Eir HaGvul, Kelim. Within Kelim, Eris within Kelim. Ve'etzim HaKeser is B'chinas Er. But the core of Keser, he didn't say those words, Etzim HaKeser. But the core of Keser is energy. Eir B'boyer Gilia Etzim. A brilliant light that reveals the source. The Eris of Atzilus Henei Adei Tzimtzum. The Eris of Atzilus, as high as they are, they're still through concealment. Therefore they're not totally brilliant, bright. And they don't literally reveal the true infinite light and energy. Well, in the future there will be the higher Havaya, this Gili Ein Seif. That means from above there'll be a level that will reveal. Not that suddenly this level reveals it. It'll just be a container, so it will draw it down. I think this is a little different. He doesn't say that before. He just said, okay, he's saying it's Mamayla, in other words. He's adding one dimension that's going to come Mamayla, not from Lamata. Yeah. And the Eir Ein Sof, the infinite light and energy, that's without Tzimtzum, without concealment, this is actual brightness. And it reveals the core energy. Yeah, for sure. So we'll stop here. We did the end of chapter 121, page 235, 236.